Hello. Thank you all for coming here for the presentation. I want to tell the interpreter to turn off their voice and let me sign and have them not interpret. I came here for my presentation and I'm sitting back and, I'm signing away, although clear. Okay, the interpreter can start voicing now. So that minute that the interpreter was not voicing, what did you think? How did you feel? The interpreter is not only here to voice for me while I'm signing. The interpreter is here so that they can accommodate, well, they're here for me so that when you ask a question, they can sign to me and I can answer. So they're really here for the both of us. I really want to emphasize that. It's not only for the deaf people, it's for all people. So let's start with a question and answer. I'm going to sign a question and I'm going to have you respond. And I really want you to think about which of your answers you want to pick. And I really want to emphasize, don't be scared of your answers. We're here to learn. I want you to leave with a little bit of information because we only have an hour, and to condense everything about deaf people is impossible. We're really going to be barely touching the surface of different topics. And I really just want you to learn. And while we're doing the questions and answers and discussing more in depth, if you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand. Because that one question that you have answered and you leave with, I'll really feel like my job is done. It's like people being scared to ask questions about sex. Don't be afraid to ask. I'm here so that you can ask those questions that you may not feel so comfortable asking. So I really want to emphasize those 2 points. So are you guys ready for the question and answer? Okay. All right. Okay, so now, the word that best describes people that cannot hear. What would be the best word? Our first choice is deaf. Second, hard of hearing. Third, hearing impaired. Fourth, physically disabled. And then 5, you just don't know. Now, how many answered the first question? How many? Around 10 people. Second, how many people for hard of hearing? You raise their hand. Yeah, you must answer. No one can just sit. Third, for hearing impaired. Who answered? Around 3. Okay. Fourth, for physically disabled. How many? Oh, okay, none. All right, 5 for physically impaired. Okay. The correct answer is deaf. Yep. Deaf is a clear meaning of having ASL and deaf culture all together. Sometimes it's a little, obscure, but, that's how we define ourselves. So around the world in America, there's around 16,000 people that just differ from, 16 million people that differ from hard of hearing to deaf. We have 300,000 that are profoundly deaf. So we have 4,000 well, we're going go a little bit more in depth with that with our questions. Do you feel that there's one universal sign language for the entire world? Is that true or false? How many think it's true? Okay. How many answered false? All of you. Wow. Well, all of you are right. In a different part of the world, they have their own sign language, and here in America, we have American Sign Language, which is ASL. We have our own grammar, our own non-manuals, our own ways to express ourselves. The interpreter, when they train, they don't just have to learn the language, they have to learn the culture, how to voice, how to switch to sign, and add non-manuals and body gestures. So they have to hold a certain amount of information before they can actually proceed. It's quite amazing. An example of the language would be like run. In English, we just have this one word. We can change it however way we need to do it for grammatical correction. But for us, we have run like running nose, running water, running a race, running in different ways we use it in a sentence. Isn't that interesting? All right, next question is, do you think that deaf people can read lips easily? Do you think it's true or false? Who do you think thinks true? Okay, we have about one. How many for false? Okay, we are around 10. Well, you're right. Research says that 35% of reading lips can be picked up, but a lot of it's missed. So there's a lot of information being not understood. Sometimes people make guesses at the words that they think were read on the lips. Okay? So, one word. I'm going to show right here the difference. Guess which word I said on this side and on the other side. Did I say sick? Test? Another person said set or 10. Just different words pop up. And I'm going, some people think sex, okay. 6. Really the word that I'm saying, first one was 6 and the second one was sex. So can you imagine having to read lips accurately? What are you going to do if you're missing all this information? It's very tough. It's not a good experience. Some people, are okay at reading lips, but if you're not sure, write down any information that, you want to make sure is getting through. So there was one experience that I had where I was on a train, I was ordering something, and I paid because the person just said something I could not understand. I paid, and then I came back, and then the person said 15 when I thought it was 50. So big difference. All right, next. A person learning about sign can become an interpreter. Is that true or false? First, how many said true? We have 1. How many said false? All right, half, maybe 10. Actually, they can't. Nope. The reason because is that learning sign is just focusing on the language only, not just sign. They become basic and then start to become more intermediate and then more advanced. But it's really involving the culture and being able to read the person and accommodate them. And also, when it comes to voicing, you have to be able to match that as well. Some people don't know how to do that. They think that sign language is just enough. But it's really a training program that an interpreter needs to go through to become an interpreter. All right, so next, skip that. Let's go this one. Okay, another question. True or false? If you look at a person with a hearing aid, you think, oh, they can hear me. They can understand everything that I'm saying. Nothing's being missed. Is that true or false? Who said true? Okay. 6. How many said false? 2. I guess I got a couple more thinking about it. The answer is no. Not always. Not always. Remember. No, wait. Hold on a sec. Okay, there we go. Is that there's really 3 groups that I want to look at. And there's a different range of deaf, but it really boils down to 3 and compare to, basically the basics. So we have deaf, hard of hearing, and then people that are newly deaf, that became deaf later in life. In the deaf group, they usually went to a residential school, they grew up the culture, and they grew up with ASL. Okay? It's very different. Families are different, generations are different. Their hearing loss is different. The second group is hard of hearing. And it's not really deaf, and it's not really later in life deaf. They still sign, still have connections, but they also think that hearing is important as well. So they have to swing between both worlds. The English language and ASL are very different. It's really hard to measure. For example, hard of hearing or deaf, there could have been an infection, there could have been a sickness, or they lost their hearing later on in childhood. But for the people who became deaf later on in life, they grew up with hearing. They grew up in a hearing world, spoke English, where they were able to hear, and then all of a sudden they weren't able to hear anymore. It's an awful, situation, but for that group, but the first 2 groups, they grew up with that. So the hearing people that became later on deaf, they had that. For the first 2 groups, they had more of a better setup. But for the ones in the third group, sometimes it's a little difficult to adjust and they have a constant struggle because of the world they used to live in and now having to adapt.